This computer. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. And on the program tonight, our first after a long hiatus, we welcome back to the show Arnold August. Arnold has an MA in political science from McGill University, where he also completed 2 years of PhD studies in the same field. He is a Montreal-based author and journalist, specializing in geopolitics and international relations, the global south, multipolarity, Russia-Ukraine-NATO, Palestine, Iran, Latin America, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Americas, ALBA, Venezuela, Cuba, First Peoples, China, BRICS, West Asia, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. He has done 3 books on Cuba, and he has another one on the legacy of Fidel coming out, Fidel Castro. And his work has and his books, his 3 books have been published in English, French, Korean, Farzi, and Spanish. He's often on Press TV, RT, and Telesur, and he has articles that you can find on the Canada Files, Black Agenda Report, globalresearch.ca, and he's also part of the International Manifesto Group, the editorial team. But today we're not going to be talking about Cuba and Latin America. We'll be talking about Palestine and Iran. But firstly, Arnold, thank you so much for coming back on the program.
It's always a pleasure for me to appear on your show. I love exchange. I don't see it as a you're interviewing me. I see it as a fruitful exchange between two people.
Well, thank you very much for that,
And
Arnold.
that's the way I like it personally.
And it's thank you for that, Arnold. And it's always a real honor to have you on. So first off, Arnold, let's talk about let's just give me your overall thoughts and reflections on the grotesque snuff film, which is Israel's brutal genocidal onslaught on the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank, as well as East Jerusalem, and now Lebanon, as well as Syria. I'm curious, your overall reflections on on the ongoing horror that we still see, on our laptops, our iPhones, and television screens.
Yeah, it definitely is the story today, and I think it will be for the coming weeks and months for sure. My overall view, not to take up too much time and, providing a synthesis, is that the United States and Israel, which works as a sort of the military base of United States in the Middle East, their overall goal has been right from the beginning. Before it was with the British, and now mainly with the United States, but also with other countries in the West, such as Canada, is to establish an enclave of Zionism, which in my view has to be defined a bit more precisely as Jewish supremacy in that region, necessarily based on the exclusion and this of the Palestinian people, to the extent, if necessary, the elimination of the Palestinian people. That is what the crux of the story is now. Of course, it's very complicated because we know Israel is also a wild card with Netanyahu. He may not do the type of things that United States prefers at this time, but I guess we can discuss this in the coming half an hour, 45 minutes. But that's my overall view. It hasn't changed since the beginning, and it will not change until the Zionist regime, based on the notion of Jewish supremacy, is actually defeated, just as the Nazis were defeated in the Second World War.
Exactly,
And
and of course,
in a nutshell.
and of course, right, and of course, uh, economic apartheid has not been eradicated in South Africa, but certainly racial apartheid
Right.
has been eradicated. And that's actually a perfect segue to this. That's actually a perfect segue then to this question. Now, I think it was about 2 years ago. I moderated a debate that we had with World Beyond Wars, David Swanson, on if
Yes,
wars are ever justifiable. A very good
I,
debate between two
yeah, I,
lifelong anti-imperialists and
yeah,
and anti-war activists. Yeah.
I recall that very well, and I think about
Oh,
that.
actually, hold on one second, Arnold.
Yeah,
Hey, let me call you back because I'm in the middle of an interview.
That's
Sorry
good.
about
That
that,
happens
folks.
often.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
I remember that interview very well and with a lot of nostalgia. I liked it very much.
eh, exactly, and of course, you made the case in the debates that that a settler colonial regime like Israel and its brutal occupation subjugation of the indigenous Palestinians is an example of, while we want to end the practice of warfare and Western imperialism, when you have a settler colonial regime and an aggressor like Israel and its kindred spirits, the US, Brits, and New Zealand, Canada, and Australia, the people who they're subjugating have every right to fight back.
Right.
So, but that being said, I think when Palestinians target the Israeli military, I of course see no objection to that. But many people would say when Palestinian resistance does an act like what happened October the 7th, and they kidnap people who aren't military people or even policy makers of the Zionist entity, that only makes Israeli civilians and its supporters more in favor of the very powers that be that suppress Palestinians. And many people would say that it's counterproductive armed Palestinian resistance because it strengthens the very oppressive regime Palestinians and their allies claim to want to overthrow. So I'm curious your response to that, given that there's been some evidence that Netanyahu allowed the October 7th attacks to happen so that he could distract the Israeli public from his corruption scandals and his highly reactionary judicial reforms with his far-right partners, and the Holocaust that we're seeing the Palestinians go through, which sadly much of the Israeli public supports, makes me think that the attack on October the 7th was counterproductive and not helpful in the cause of justice for the Palestinians. So I'm curious your response on that.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I'm, for that very transparent view and question. First, I'd like to say that I do not believe, and everything indicates that it was not that Netanyahu allowed this to take place. He wanted this to take place as a pretext to carry out the genocide. There's no evidence of that at all. In fact, the evidence points to the contrary. They were taken by surprise. And one of the main things about that is that it tore to shreds the invincibility of the Israeli Defense Force, the invincibility of Israeli intelligence. Now, let's get back to October 7th. I know I always go, I like to look at what the initial reaction is, the gut reaction of people are.
Yeah.
Sometimes very telling. I'll tell you mine, quite frankly. When I saw the report on the October 7th incident, I didn't know too much about it. I never heard of that kibbutz. I didn't know the details of the region, but except in the reports, they say very clearly that there was a music festival taking place very near Gaza, the gates of Gaza. So what is my initial reaction, Youri? Here's what I thought to myself, and I still think the same thing. What the hell? How the hell can you have a music festival next to a concentration camp? It's the equivalent. Like, how would the Jews have liked it if that during the Second World War, the Nazis had a music festival, a rave right next to the extermination camps? That's how I saw it. That was my gut reaction, and I think I was right on that. I still have the same feeling. For example, it is said that you echoed. I don't know if it's your view, but a view that is a promulgated or propagated quite often, that the people who were there, the Palestinian defense killed civilians. This is how I look at it. First of all, in general, before getting back to those people who were there, like, I don't believe that there's such a thing as innocent settlers in Israel. I don't agree with the concept settler extremists. Just by being a settler, you are an extremist because you are carrying out an illegal occupation by force of the indigenous people who've been there for centuries and centuries. So So the issue of civilians, I don't go for that. Then more specifically with regards to who was there at that rave, that musical festival, all the evidence shows that many of them were either in the army or have come out of the army. So they're not innocent people, as women and men as well. So these are actually military people who were there, either previously fighting in the fascist Israel Defense Force, or were still in there, and that is when the reason they were there. Now, the other point is that, like who okay, given that, okay, even if you don't agree with that, but who killed those people? Since the October 7th event took place, and I just had that gut reaction, how come how can I have a music festival next to a concentration camp? Well, my pessimism was borne out to be true, because in fact we have learned since then, and this has even been corroborated by the Israeli Hebrew media, that the Israel used, not for the first time, the second or third time in the conflict with the Palestinian people, the well-known Hannibal doctrine. That is, you must, in this case, the Israeli defense forces have to kill potential Israeli captives and hostages, so they cannot be used as a wedge against Israel. So everything has come out. Israel was the one who killed the vast majority of them. We see pictures of all those auto cars being burnt up, and the massive destruction. It could not have been carried out just by Hamas. It was carried out by the Apache helicopters that were sent by the Israeli army to wipe out their own citizens, so they cannot be captured and then used as a wedge or a bargaining chip against Israel. So I have no empathy at all for the people who were there. Firstly, a rave next to a concentration camp. Secondly, the fact that they were very closely tied to the Israeli army. And thirdly, they were killed not the narrative right after that. Oh, this was terrible. This was done by Israel. They killed babies. This was completely demystified. This was it was not true. They killed babies.
I think you mean the accusation that Hamas / the Palestinian resistance killed babies.
Right. Yeah, so right after that, you have this news coming, oh, it was terrible. Hamas beheaded babies, they raped women and all that. But all this has been proven to be incorrect, non-founded, just as the notion that they were, innocent civilians there. So what happened there, that even though narrative has been completely debunked, rapes and beheaded babies, they keep on repeating the same thing. Like Netanyahu goes on television, and he keeps on repeating the same thing: beheaded babies, rapes, even though there's no proof at all. So taking all this into account, how could anyone have any sympathy for those people who were taken hostages? They are part of this problem. When you talk about the hostages, your family and their families. I watch the demonstrations in Tel Aviv that take place every weekend for quite a long time now. And Al Jazeera has some good reports, and others as well. They interview some of the participants there. And I've never seen all of the participants have basically the same narrative. What they see is, we want our hostages back. However, there should be a deal with Hamas to get them back. And once we get them back, we have to start the war again to wipe out Hamas. And this theme comes out in one way or the other from all the families. I've never heard one word, one sentence of sympathy, empathy for the Palestinian people who are going through a massive genocide, much worse than what took place on October 7th. Never have they shown any sympathy for that. The only section of society which seems to show some sympathy is the ultra-Orthodox Jews. Quite ironic. They have at least some sympathy. They will, we see them in Montreal and New York. They will march with the Palestinian flag. But in all those demonstrations in Tel Aviv, have you ever seen a Palestinian flag? Have you ever seen one person on interview saying, well, this is terrible what happened to our hostages, but it's terrible what is happening to Palestine? It's a genocide. Never, Yuri. I've never seen that. That's why I always maintain, right from the beginning of October 7th and now, that the problem is not Benjamin Netanyahu as a fascist or right winger. The Israeli society is fascist. It is the Nazis of our era.
with Jewish characteristics. I'll just
Yeah.
say though. I'll just say though. Well, I'll just say the following before getting to this question is that although yeah, I think Noam Chomsky used to always say that if you want to stop terrorism, stop participating in terrorism.
Right.
And I think and I think other people would just say that the whole that the whole an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. But that being said, the international law, even though the West doesn't practice it, but international law is clearly on the side that the Palestinians have the right to resist their occupiers and this aggressor, which is the Western-backed state of Israel, with sadly a few accomplices like the Kingdom of Morocco and even and then Saudi Arabia and so forth. So that said, given the recent attacks Israel has made on Lebanon and the fact that they continue to bomb unjustly Syria, if not every day of the week, it's every other day of the week, how scared should we be of this escalating across the region and long-term and in terms of long-term justice for the Palestinians? Do you think we'll see that happening in a decade or more, given how angry the international community, including many Westerners, are of the conduct of the state of Israel?
Yeah, I don't know, but right now, if we speak right now, which gives us a glimpse into the future, in my view, even though, of course, I don't like the United States, I have no illusions. The Biden administration does not want a war in the Middle East. They do not want to be involved in a war in the Middle East. Right from the beginning, their plan has been to use their proxy Israel, fund Israel. What do you want? We'll give you this. We'll give you that. All the armaments, airplanes, bombs, we'll give you that. But you have to wipe out Hamas. Okay. So this way, U.S. would not be directly involved. And as one says, they will have no boots on the ground. Because, despite all of the Zionist propaganda in the U.S., the war, what is happening now in Palestine, the narrative goes against the United States, not in favor of the United States. The narrative is increasingly in favor of Palestine. So the only problem was with this plan by the United States using Israel as a proxy to defeat Hamas, one small problem. In the American mindset, they could not fathom for 1 second that a people are conscious and are able to defend themselves. They're able to see through the lies against them, that they are terrorists, that they are guilty of such and such a thing, and are ready to give their life to defend themselves. And that is what they did. Hamas didn't drop from the sky. It came out of the people. It came out of the Palestinian people. Like some people like to denigrate some on the left.
Same with Hezbollah.
Right, exactly. Some like to denigrate Hamas, etc. But Hamas is as much a legitimate national liberation force as was in my time in the 1970s when we supported the Viet Cong. We supported the liberation movement in Vietnam and other movements such as that. It's different, of course. It has different characteristics, but it is a viable and legitimate national liberation force. And they have every right to defend themselves against a genocidal empire led by the United States and Israel. Like we talk about, you mentioned in the debate with David Swanson, where I defended the right of the war in the sense that the right of the Palestinian resistance, the axis of resistance all over the region, the right for them to carry out a war of resistance against Israel. Now, talking about rights, some people say Israel has a right to exist. Israel has a right to defend itself. My view, Youri, is Israel not only does not have a right to defend itself, it does not even have a right to exist. The Israeli genocidal regime is a blot on humanity. It's an insult to humanity. I think this is one of the reasons that there are so many young students in the capitalist countries, such as in Europe, United States, Canada, and elsewhere. Why are they out of the streets? Why are they ready to fight with their bare hands against the police? Why are they ready to give up their careers in the academic world? Because they see, Israel is on the wrong side of history. It's an insult. That the fact that it exists, it insults humanity. How can humanity allow that evil monster of Israel exist? It has to be eliminated. And I watched very carefully the interviews by some of the youth in, places like McGill and University of Chicago and Columbia, etc. And some of them said, when asked by journalists, mainstream media journalists, why are you doing this? How come why are you so convinced, ready to sacrifice everything? So, well, we want to be on the right side of history. We should think about that. You're young people saying 19, 20, 21 years old. We want to be on the right side of history. What does that mean? The issue of Israel is more than just Israel as such, Zionism as such. It is such an insult to civilization, human civilization, and that the dividing line now in history is to eliminate the Zionist regime. There's no other way forward for humanity in order that the people of the world can live in freedom, that they can feel proud to be a human being. You can't be proud to be a human being. While we saw so many things on television, Youri. I know you watch it. All of the crimes carried out by Israel, throwing people off roofs, the torture within Gaza, torture and rape in the prisons within occupied territories. We could go on and on. We know about that. So what is the conclusion? It has no right to exist. It has to be eliminated. Would anyone have said, oh, while the war was going on by Nazi Germany against the West, first against Russia and then the rest of the West, Nazi Germany has a right to exist. Of course, we have to keep in mind that they were badly treated after World War I with the Treaty of Versailles. They have every right to exist. No, the people of the world, including bourgeois governments such as Canada, Britain, as a secondary role, along with the Soviet Union, said no. Nazi Germany, do not have a right to exist. And based on that outlook, they defeated Nazi Germany. And those who gave the most sacrifice to defeat it was the Soviet Union. And that is the consciousness of the people, different parts of the world, that led to the defeat of Nazi Germany. I don't see, Israel is the Nazi Germany of our era. Of course, the German Nazis used gas chambers. Israel would have loved to use gas chambers if they could get away with it, if they could have gotten away with it, but they couldn't, because the gas chamber extermination has been so discredited. And during the Second World War, people went to trial on the Nuremberg trial. But what they're doing in Gaza at this time is the equivalent of gas chambers adapted to the realities of 2024. And so, people often say, well, people quote Goebbels from Second World War, the German minister of propaganda or whatever, communication. He said, you keep on telling a lie and people will end up believing the lie. So people look, oh, Goebbels is bad. But where are the Goebbels of today, Youri? Here's my take. The Goebbels of today, in addition to Biden and Kamala Harris, is the CNN. Those lily white, innocent boys like Anderson Cooper and other sellouts from the African community.
Anderson,
they are
Anderson Pooper Scooper and Jake Crapper.
Yeah, right. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Okay, these two, Jewish supremacist Zionists, along with Anderson Cooper and other, they are the Goebbels of today. We have to, shed this ahistorical notion of Second World War, of fascism and Nazis. We have to look at it today in a concrete way. And, it's a very complicated thing because some people may say, well, Harris and all that, they're not as bad as Trump. But we have to keep in mind one important thing. If you're a Marxist or even not a Marxist, that history has shown us that is the social democrats are the ones who giving a left veneer to the right wing, to they are the dangerous ones, allowing fascism to take hold. And this is what is happening in the United States at this time.
And I often say that liberals, such as the ruling Liberal Party of Canada, I often say sometimes that liberals are fascists with good table manners. So
Right.
yes, I completely agree with you, and that's why that's why we should be constantly demanding and demanding and demanding BDS now on Israel and the democratic secular one state solution. Now, changing topics, let's talk about Iran, which I'm actually surprised that I haven't covered. Wait 1 sec. Can you still hear me, Arnold? Wait 1 moment.
Youri, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You froze for.
Okay, I'm back.
You froze for a second, so if you want to repeat what you said, I didn't get it.
Okay.
Don't mind.
So
maybe that topic was so hot that your computer froze.
the European intelligence and the Western deep states aren't happy that 1+1 is back. So
Right.
Let's talk about Iran, Arnold, which I'm actually surprised I haven't covered Iran too much on the show. But let's talk about Iran now, Arnold. I know you know many Iranians who are left-leaning but supportive of the Islamic Republic, and you often have expressed your disappointment in that many anti-war and anti-imperialist folk who are against sanctions and any kind of war in Iran, but still want to see regime change in Iran and denounce the system in Iran. Can you talk briefly about that before I ask this other question about Iran?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for bringing this up. Iran is very important. I watched the Iranian foreign minister speak in the UN today. Very interesting. Firstly, on one point, you said, I expressed my disappointment with regards to some people on the left regarding their views on Iran. That disappointment is not the right word. The right word is disgust. How can when they say that they oppose Iran because it's a it's a theocracy, a dictatorial theocracy. Who the hell? I mean, Iran that comes from a history and a civilization of thousands of years. They collectively overthrow the Shah of Iran, which is imposed by the United States. And since that time, in difficult conditions, sanctions, etc., they have been developing a very vibrant society, economy, etc. I know it's not perfect, but they have done so much, developed so much over the years since 1979, not to mention their important support for the people of the Middle East. I mean, the axis of resistance is really headed by Iran, along with Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and with Hezbollah, Hamas, etc. Now, and Syria, of course, I think I mentioned that. Now, this so-called theocratic dictatorship, theocracy. What is that word again?
Theocratic dictatorship or
theocratic dictatorship are doing all these things against U.S. imperialism. Well, I would say if that's a theocratic dictatorship, that's great, but it isn't. They're very secular, open-minded. They have developed science and all that, and so I mean secular in the sense that they are not limited to religion. They're able to, develop things in science. And look, they have a great relation with countries such as Venezuela, with Hugo Chavez before, and now Maduro, as well as Cuba, not to mention Nicaragua and many other such countries, including China, very close relation with China. So the ideology, far from being narrow, a religious ideology, they have that. At the same time, they are prone and they very actively seek out relationship with countries which have other progressive ideas. I mean, I once saw the former president of Iran in the United Nations. He made his first speech there. He said that we are against the empire and capitalism, which is no good for humanity. For me, that's good enough. So whether he's religious or not, irrespective of his garb, how he dresses and all that, that is good enough for me. And like what I said, I even have a short YouTube on that, showing my disgust for those people on the left who give them sitting their comfortable rooms in the capitalist countries criticizing the Iranian government for being a dictatorship, a theocracy, and all that. Okay, now the point is that my view is watching Iran very carefully. I know them a bit from the inside. They translated one of my books. I appear on Iranian TV regularly. I just had one this afternoon. So I know them. I have direct contact with them through their journalists and all that. So I know them. Okay. Now, the fact is that what I said in a YouTube, and I'll repeat it now, that the Iranian government or the Iranian revolution is more revolutionary, anti-imperialist than all of the so-called and so-called leftists who criticize the Iranian government. They are, true to their word. They oppose U.S. domination. They support, even now under very difficult conditions, after the death of their former president, they are still carrying out the resistance. No country has done more than to arm and support Hamas and Hezbollah and Yemen than Iran. Now, when you're fighting against a Nazi dictatorship, isn't that good? How could someone on the left criticize the government, because of their own very narrow-minded notion? And when the Iranian government, despite the situation, is doing so much to fulfill the most important historical mission facing humanity at this time, to defeat Nazi Israel. So, when you say disappointment, no, I have utmost disgust for these individuals, and more often than not, they they oppose. It's good. They oppose the government officials. Sometimes they call them out and all that, and say, look how great they are. But the problem with that is that they put so much emphasis on their own opposition to these government officials, for example, in Canada, while at the same time completely belittling, negating the important role of the resistant fighters, the ones who are doing the fighting in the Middle East. If it was not for them, Palestine would no longer be there. So yes, good interrupting and all that, but not to the extent of obliterating and not hailing, refusing to hail in one way or another the resistant fighters. They are the ones who are the real heroes, not the individuals who oppose such and such politician. Very good, but it's not the only thing that's going on that leads to the defeat of Zionism and to the liberation of Palestine.
That actually that's a perfect segue to this question. Now, when people talk about Iran, we know that it was a secular constitutional republic, and Mohammad Mossadegh was the first democratically elected leftist that took power in Iran, and we know that Mohammad Mossadegh was overthrown in an Anglo-American and Canadian coup. Iran then became an absolute monarch under the Shah, and while I do applaud his secularism and his feminism, his land reforms were corrupt. He, of course, his suppression of leftists was horrendous. And
you talk about who? About Mossadegh?
No, the Shah when he took power.
The Shah, well, of course, yes.
Yeah, and we know that that his suppression of leftist opposition was horrendous, and that the disparity between the rich and the poor were deplorable. So, can you talk briefly, if possible, about how ironically the Shia conservatives of Ayatollah Khomeini, when they actually came out, people, of course, can object to some of the social regressivism, but didn't they give more workers' rights and even addressed this serious gap between rich and poor in Iran that had existed under the Shah, right?
Well, I have to admit I'm not an expert in the evolution of the economic situation there, but I'm familiar with some aspects. For example, the health system. I remember I was listening to a TV report in which Mohammed Marandi, from University of Tehran, who's very well known, and he knows about Iran, from the inside.
Oh, yes, yeah. I know him, Dr. Marandi.
Mohammed Marandi, yeah, Professor Marandi. and he said that the Iranian health system was developed to a large extent on the Cuban health system, and he had books in his hands that were, I think, used by his father, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, who was one of the people that was instrumental in developing the health system in Iran, and which was to a large extent inspired from the Cuban socialist system. So this is one example that I can give, and I'm sure that there are others in terms of education. I mean, I'm in contact. I watch their representatives on TV interviews, but the universities in Tehran, are so advanced in terms of knowledge about the world, and including the United States, including what's happening in Latin America and other countries of the world. The access to university has increased a lot. Including for women, by the way. You see this on TV. Women are, going to universities, participating in university as well as that. I mean, even in sports, besides, great presentation, great representation of Iran in the last Olympics in Paris. So without going into details and pretending that I know too much about the evolution of the Iranian social and economic system since 1979, everything indicates that they have made advances. And we have to keep in mind, Youri, that these advances are being made uh, as a country that is one of the most sanctions in the world. The most sanctioned in the world is Russia, and one of the other most sanctioned country in the world is Iran. And despite that, they have been developing their economy, etc. I know that there are problems with regards to their economy, but look how they are working to develop relations, economic, political, and military relations with other countries, such as China on the one hand, and very far away, Venezuela on the other hand, not to mention Russia. And now, when BRICS is being developed, there's an important meeting coming up in October of all the BRICS countries. I think there's something like 40 BRICS countries that are getting together in a city in Russia, and Iran is part of it. The United States is not part of it. So there's so many reasons for anyone who has an open mind to applaud the Iranian government for its domestic policies over the years, despite the sanctions, as well how they are reaching out to other countries with other systems. And this, what I believe, is this momentous moment in history, this time in history today as we speak, Youri, where there is a definite move to shake the peoples of the world, especially Western Asia, Africa, and Latin America, shake that hold by the U.S. hegemony over the economy, over the use of the dollar. This is going on right now as we speak, and Iran is one of the main pillars of that. So taking all of these things together, I will give in a report card for Iran, everything. They have their problems, but it's up to Iran to deal with it. It's not up to the United States. United States has no history of civilization. It is a terrorist state. It came into being because they saw in Britain a competition to their nascent and republic, which they wanted to have a more important role on the international stage. Then they went on to genocide, slavery, and all that. This is the history of the United States. This current state, 2024, it's a vestige of slavery and the elimination of the indigenous people. And on the other hand, Iran, a country with thousands of history, of civilization, of know-how, who made very important inventions in terms of science and etc. We're talking about two different civilizations. The lowest one could go, that is the United States, and Iran, I would say one of the highest that one could go as far as civilization, know-how, and just knowing how to live in a world, respecting the views of others. I mean, I heard the Iranian president speak today in the United Nations. He's basically presenting the notion that Iran agrees with the principle that we have to open up, yes, but at the same time develop relations with other countries and defending the sovereignty and the integrity of the Iranian people. So they know where they're coming from. They know how to speak. They know what diplomacy is all about.
And actually, there's an interesting fact about Iran that I think needs to be said. is that when they is that of course many people criticize the Islamic Republic of Iran. They say it's a theocratic dictatorship. But actually, what I find quite interesting though about Iran, I was watching a program, the program Moderate Rebels, Max Blumenthal and Ben Norton, and they had an Iranian secular leftist on the program, and they said that oftentimes Iranians have to choose between a rock and a hard place. So when they get somebody like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, though they may not like his social conservative views, they vote for him because when it comes to socioeconomics, he's very, leftish and very progressive. And that often the Iranian opposition that sometimes gets into power, although they are very socially liberal, very feminist, and very secular, their economic agenda tends to be, neoliberalism and so forth. So I think that's very interesting. When people talk, that's an interesting fact that people should, study on the
Yeah, I
Reddit.
think you're right. We know that this is the situation in Iran. They have a, as you say, they have like saddling between, two options, and it's not an easy thing to accomplish. But they're dealing with it, and what you say is right.
Okay, so Arnold, talk to us about why is it that you have people who say that they're not supportive of any kind of military invasion of Iran by the West and Israel. Luckily, Saudi Arabia and Iran have made peace with each other. They have they have détente with each other thanks to China. But you have people who say that they're not supportive of a Western military invasion of Iran, but they are supportive of sanctions on Iran because they believe they're Western professional liars that Iran is creating nuclear weapons and chemical weapons. Can you talk to us about how Iran is not creating, nuclear weapons
Uh,
briefly, if it's possible?
Very briefly, just analyzing the very important remarks made by the Iranian president just about an hour or 2 hours before we came online together. He said that of all the countries in the world, they have done most to provide the availability of foreign countries to verify their nuclear program. And it's true. There have been so many efforts on their part. Okay, you want to verify that? Of course, no problem. But, and that's why an agreement was actually signed, I believe, with the Obama administration because Iran was so open. We have nothing to hide. It's transparent. Have a look yourself. So, that is a fact of life. But, those who are against Iran have just fabricated this notion that Iran is a dangerous country. They're going to develop, nuclear weapons, and who knows, they can invade and destroy Iran and all that. There's no evidence at all to indicate that Iran is interested in nuclear development for any offensive nature. At the same time, one cannot deny the fact that having nuclear weapons is an important deterrence. If those who are criticizing Iran for that, I'd like to ask them what would have happened to Kim Il Jong, to Korea, if they would have given up their nuclear weapons. They would have been smashed by now. And what happened in Libya? When they gave up, they were forced to give up the nuclear weapons as defense, it was smashed as well. So as a deterrent, it's very good. But Iran is interested in that only as a deterrent, not as an instrument of offense or whatever in any regions of the world, including in the Middle East.
I also have to, I think it's also important to say this. There are many, even amongst the Iranian opposition, the secular opposition, which is mostly people in the diaspora communities of Iran, they all say that even if Iran was creating nuclear weapons, we don't care because Iran has every right, hypothetically, to be creating weapons of mass destruction when Britain, France, the United States has nuclear weapons and other horrendous weapons of mass destruction, and Israel, the main aggressor in the Middle East, which does the bidding of the West, they have nuclear, they have nuclear weapons, which is why I was always against the Iran nuclear deal.
I'm not too sure what you mean exactly. You mean some people on the left are criticizing Iran for having these nuclear weapons, or can you
No,
clarify?
no, well, no. What I was saying is that even people who may be opposed to the Iranian, the current Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic, a lot of them will express the following. They'll say that even if Iran was creating nuclear weapons, they have every right to because the U.S., Britain,
Oh,
France, and Israel has nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction.
well, I learned a lot from you today. I didn't know these individuals on that specter of the political horizon offer that opinion, but they're right. I mean, it has every right to. I mean, you mentioned Israel. This rogue regime, this terrorist rogue regime, has nuclear weapons, and the most terrorist regime in the history of the world, that is United States of America. Remember, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, all of the aggression just since Second World War, not to mention everything that happened before, for example, against Cuba in the 19th century, and many other examples. In Africa, United States in collusion with others. So for the Iran has every right to have nuclear weapons to defend itself. And the problem with nuclear weapons is that they're in the hands of two important terrorist states, United States and Israel. That is the problem. People who are concerned with nuclear weapons, they should focus on the United States and Israel and let Iran and other countries, Korea, develop their nuclear capabilities, developments according to their own needs, their own defense, and their own industrial development.
Exactly. And the only reason why North Korea has their nuclear weapons is because horrendous biological and chemical weapons were used on North Korea, on the Korean peninsula during the Korean War. And
Mhm.
Iran, when the Islamic Republic came about, was attacked. They had that brutal war with Iraq, and Iraq under Saddam Hussein was doing the bidding of the West, and the WMDs that did exist in Iraq at the time was provided by Israel, Germany,
Mhm.
France, Belgium, the United States, and Britain. So it's amazing how that's always completely
No, you're
ignored.
right. No, it's absolutely ridiculous that these what you're raising there should be in the forefront of the discussion, and I'm glad that you raised it for the listeners today.
So let me ask you this final so let me ask you this final question then,
Right.
which is explain to an audience why, if they are anti-war, anti-imperialist, why they should not support not only military action to overthrow the Iranian government, but why they should also not support color revolutions on Iran, even if they object to Iran's theocracy. And what do you think of the Iranian diaspora? Many who are secular, many who are socially liberal, and they're very feminist and clear liberationists. Why, even if they may have legitimate grievances towards their former government, uh, they 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 should not be trying to influence Western governments to overthrow the current Iranian
I
regime.
think the main right of people to deal with the insufficiencies of the Iranian regime or Iranian government, the Islamic Republic, it should be in the hands of the people in Iran. Like just I would like to, if you don't mind, just tear that notion apart from the diaspora in Iran with regards to the color revolution that they tried to foment 2 years ago and are always
Twice.
well, twice, and it's an ongoing thing. Now, then, if I remember correctly, let me know if I'm right or wrong, Youri. Their main slogan a couple of years ago was "Woman, Life, Liberty." Right? Now, where are the woman, life, liberty when the Palestinian women are arrested, tortured, raped in Israeli prisons? Where is the life, woman, life, liberty when the Palestinian women are butchered alongside their children, making up 75% or 75% of the people killed, where are they? You have nothing to say about that? Only when something happens in Iran, one incident in Iran, oh, a woman, life, liberty. I think it's important for people on the left, people who are against the war, to see through the double narrative of the those who promote color revolution, for example, in Iran, a very good example. Completely fabricated notion, exaggerated notion with regards to the situation of the Iranian women at that time and now. I mean, one has to deal with the double standards. This thing about what aboutism. I think it's good. We should use that. When they say woman, life, liberty, I say, well, what about you? Where were you? Where are you with regards to women being raped and tortured, etc., in the Israeli jails in Palestine? We have every right to answer them with that rebuttal, that question. What about this? And then I think they would perhaps, if they don't get any sense in their mind, they will at least think about it and not get caught into the narrative, which is fomented by the United States and its allies with regards to color revolution in Iran, which is not happening, by the way. The Iranian people are conscious. There are problems there, but they're patriotic enough and they're devoted enough to the well-being of the Iranian people to see through all the attempts of color revolution in Iran. It did not happen 2 years ago or a year ago, or whatever, several times, and it will not happen in the future as well. I mean, Iran went through a major problem. Their president, who was so revered, he was killed in a helicopter crash. Yet they were able to overcome this. I had the honor of being a present in a rolling coverage for 12 hours in a row during the funeral procession and later on the elections after the accident that killed their president. And you could see it, I was on TV with others, but we also had live shots of the processions taking place in Iran. Western liberals, they have to get in their mind. Iranians are not stupid. They have their own conscience. They have many thousands of years of civilization. They're able to figure out which are the Iranian leaders that they revere and which they do not, and the importance of just allowing them to live their own life.
And one more final thing is, when we look at the history of Iran and Western imperialism in Iran, but doesn't Iran and Afghanistan, when the West overthrew the secular communist governments there, and then we had the Taliban and the catastrophe, which was the war in Afghanistan. Don't those two countries, and even Russia, when we talk about people who are opposed to Putin, isn't the lesson learned in all of those countries, and he can even be, Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein's Iraq, that we need to be opposed to imperialism? As Eve Engler says, international relations should be first do no harm. And and because of Western imperialism doing harm, it creates, these situations where Iran has the Islamic Republic, Russia has Putin, countries like Libya are in a mess. Afghanistan has the Taliban, but the root of all of those problems is because of Western imperialism. So let's not intervene in other people's affairs and let's trust and let's just trust that the people themselves of whatever country can fix whatever country and advance whatever socialism they try to build. Correct?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you mentioned President Putin. I'll make a statement. It might make some people howl, but not only do I refuse to criticize or denounce Putin, but I have been reading all of his comments, remarks, press conferences for some time, especially since the special military operation on Ukraine. And I would like to say that, in my view, President Putin is now one of the most outstanding diplomats in the world, one of the best thinkers in the world, the person who's going through an evolution. He has changed his mind several times over the last year or two with regards to his evaluation of the former USSR and how he evaluates Russia, that tradition of Russia Soviet Union, that fought, that lost so many people in opposing Nazi Germany, he brings out the best of this sentiment. Now, as Russia opposes the Western onslaught with regards to Ukraine. I read all of his stuff. I have a lot of respect for him. I'm not ashamed at all to say it. But those people who should be ashamed are those who put Putin and Bush and Obama and Biden in the same category. That's disgraceful. President Putin is someone who's way over the intellectual and political and moral level of all of these people. And I think people should, rather than follow this line that they're all dictators, they should think seriously. Read what Putin has to say. It's available in English. They have everything in English. Read what Putin has to say, and then make your own decision. But don't fall for this, left liberal thing of, the problem is Russia. The problem is President Putin. It is not the case at all.
Tanky. Kidding, of course. Well, I think that's a very good place to end. Well, we were and thank you for all your remarks, Arnold. And well, I think that's a very perfect place to end. So we were joined on this edition of 1+1 with Arnold August, and let me remind people, Arnold has an MA in political science from McGill University, where he completed 2 years of a PhD studies in the same field. He is a Montreal-based author and journalist specializing in geopolitics, IA, the Global South, multipolarity, the Russia-Ukraine-NATO crisis, Palestine, Iran, Latin America, ALBA, Venezuela, China, BRICS, West Asia, and the Shanghai Cooperation. You can find all of his articles at you can find all of his articles at his website, where a lot of his articles from the Canada Files, Black Agenda Report, and globalresearch.ca is there. He's also part of the International Manifesto Group, and folks should also check that out. And he's done 3 superb books on Cuba and Latin America, which, again, people should check out. Arnold, thank you so much for coming on the program. Best of luck in whatever you do, and I look forward to you coming back on the show.
If you mind, I would just, if you don't mind, I'd like to just mention my website.
Yes,
it's very
go ahead.
easy. www.arnoldaugust.com. Arnold August, one word, .com. Feel free to visit. It's a brand new, modern website.
Oh, and Arnold, the next time we have you back on the program, we have to talk about your latest book on Fidel Castro, and I'm really looking forward to talking about Cuba, basically, Cuban history from the Cold War up until Fidel Castro's death, and we're going to look at many of the accomplishments, some of the failures, and I'm looking forward to getting that book and to having you.
Yeah, well, that book will be out in English, published by Iskra in 2025. I don't know when in 2025, but definitely in 2025. That might be, when it is published in English, an appropriate time to deal with Cuba and that specific publication of mine.
Oh, and folks, and one more thing. Folks, you can now donate to 1+1, so please donate to 1+1. The link is on my YouTube channel. I'll make sure to link to that and all of Arnold's work. And until then, power to the people, death to imperialism, and free Palestine.
Right.
And yes, BDS and democratic one-state solution now.